Welcome. I'm so glad everybody's here for the Facebook Live ROCO Reveal. And what that really just means is that we're going to have a discussion with the musicians, the composers, all the people involved in bringing new music to life. And just, I've always said you can't Zoom with Beethoven, and I take that back. I've not always said that. I've said that since March of 2020. We've been really using technology to be innovative and also just continue the connection, deepen the connection, because what we're all about is access. And the relationships are the number one thing. When I started ROCO in 2005, it was all about who are the people we're playing together, not what are we playing. But then when we started commissioning living composers, it was a lot about that as well. And I think, Christina Jennings, one of my best friends from Juilliard, and she a flutist, and that's where I met her. And then Matt Dane here at Rice in Houston, and they are married now with one of your children is my godson, and I claim them both on Larry's and mine. But and then Marcus, we commissioned you in 2016 February for the first time we really commissioned you with a work that wound up on our CD Visions Take Flight that was recognized for a Grammy Producer of the Year of Blanton Allspa. So it's just been a wonderful relationship building. And with commissioning, we have done 118 world premiere commissions. And I think we're the third largest in the nation as far as commissioning goes. And a lot of works by women, composers of color. Just being in relationship with diverse voices is what makes that happen. You don't have to strive for any award for that. And I think that's what's important, is not really counting it, but just acknowledging that it's important. So I want to talk about our QR stuff later, but I'd love to kind of get to the point of when we do commission composers, we a lot of times recommission them because we want to continue that dialogue, that conversation about what's happening. So I want to know, because so many musicians in ROCO get to commission their own works. Thomas Holton commissioned Dorothy Gates for a trombone concerto. And I think that's what's exciting about just having musicians pick their composer. I choose you, And so, Christina and Matt, I'd really love to hear from you guys. What does it feel like to have a piece written specifically for you?
You start?
Yeah, I'll start, and I'll let him move into the reason that we felt Marcus was the perfect choice for this particular concerto. But we've actually had quite a few pieces written for us, in particular the last 15, 16 months because of COVID and because we've been together, and what a great opportunity to make a silver lining there. But it's every composer is different, but there is nothing like working with a live composer and bringing something to life. That is such a special and unique thing that musicians get to do. And I've been saying this since we started working on the piece, but this is a stunning piece of music that you will all love to hear soon. And I think we should go right into why we thought Marcus would be the right composer for this project.
Well, yes, and maybe I'll pick it up here. I first got to know Marcus. I first got to know you through the piece that we commissioned with ROCO, that Concerto for Orchestra, which I loved. And I have to admit that it was that experience at that time. It just happened to be right when I was getting more comfortable with viola d'amore, which is the instrument for which this piece is written for. And because of that concerto that he wrote for ROCO, I asked Marcus to write a solo piece for me on viola d'amore, thinking that he was just the right kind of person who was game to try something different. I love working with composers on any new music, but I think to me it's been especially exciting on viola d'amore because it's something that no one really knows, and at that point I have to admit even I didn't really know the instrument that well. I was just learning what it could do that no other instrument could do, and so I was looking for willing partners to explore the possibilities of it. Marcus was, as I said, he was game for it. So he wrote this spectacular piece based on Khalil Gibran poetry that was fabulous to play. It was also very difficult. And
What is a viola d'amore? So let's back up a minute. What's a viola d'amore?
Yes, thanks for asking, Alecia. Yeah. So the viola d'amore it's basically between a violin and viola in size. But you'll notice it's got all these pegs. It's an instrument that was invented in the Baroque era It has a whole set, unlike our modern string instruments, which have 4 playing strings. I have 7 playing strings on the top that I finger, but then I also have this whole set of strings underneath that you can see. So my bridge is actually like a 2-layer bridge. It's kind of like driving in Boston. So, so these down here are tuned at the same pitches as the ones above. They just ring. They're called sympathetic strings, those bottom strings, where they just ring and they're giving this special aura to the sound, the special halo. And that was an idea that was very exciting to Baroque composers when it was invented. There was an idea. There were Middle Eastern instruments that had it long before that, but there were none in Europe. And so composers like Bach and Vivaldi, Telemann were all quite excited about it. What excited them, I think, were a couple things. First of all, it's tuned differently, so I have different possibilities of intervals to play. So that's one technical thing. But then there's this sound that's different, and it's a very delicate, can be a very thin sound, but it feels very vulnerable and kind of it's a very special color.
That's why it's called the viola of love, which is more, right? It's like,
yes.
So I'd love to talk to Marcus now and just bring him on to talk about the piece and why you wanted to lean into this more with Viola d'Amore, and the idea that the sound in of itself and what the whole piece is about, the theme around that. Just give us a little background on, number one, the theme and what the piece is about, and then about the Viola d'Amore and your choice there. And then I'm going to talk about instrumentation or ask you questions, and then you guys can weigh in on that. But would you just start with the piece itself and what it's about? That'd be great.
Yeah, so I started writing the piece in the summer of 2019, and it was to be premiered, as we all know, in May of 2020.
Can you lean in a little bit? It's hard to hear you.
I can pull my mic closer.
Is
that better?
Yes, that's better. Thanks.
So, okay, I started composing the piece in summer of 2019, and it was scheduled to be premiered, as we all know, in May 2020. In the summer of 2019, I was actually in Germany with my grandmother, who was in her last days. And as you know, I was sitting around taking care of some of the family business. I was, spending time on the internet and came across the memorial ceremony for this glacier in Iceland, the Ok Glacier. And it got me thinking about permanence and impermanence and saying goodbye to something that's you think has always been there and is infinite. But like my grandmother, she'd been there my whole life, and I knew that she was going to die and move on. And so the piece sort of became a piece about dealing with that going away and that saying goodbye to something that you think would be there forever. And for whatever reason, it is no longer there at a certain point. This was all before COVID, of course, and I can talk about that in a little bit about what happened to the piece after the premiere was delayed and we were into this other entire world. But yeah, I started working on it, and I remember talking with Matt and Christina about should it be for just flute viola and orchestra or flute viola d'amore and orchestra. And there's a really pragmatic issue with that as a composer because I think, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, we can probably count the people who play viola d'amore at a very high soloistic level on one hand, maybe two hands in the world that could actually take this piece on and give it life. And that's something we think about as a composer, is we want our pieces to last beyond the first performance. So there is that consideration, but I loved writing the solo piece for Matt for viola d'amore and getting to learn this new instrument that's absolutely beautiful. It's unique. I love writing for string instruments. So I really just wanted to take on the challenge and wanted to make the piece as special as sort of the circumstances that inspired it.
That's beautiful. I'm wondering if Matt could just play the viola d'amore just a slight bit, just to hear the tonality, just very briefly, because And then I don't know. I know, Christina, you have your flute, and I know you don't want to play stuff together, but even just a chord together to hear. But yeah, if you play the viola d'amore, because then I have some questions about instrumentation.
Yeah. So.
Well, yeah.
So.
I'm guessing that's from the piece, that part.
Well, yes.
Yeah. Spoiler.
Yes, exactly.
So do you have something, I know you don't need to play the whole thing, but is there a little tiny piece you could play part of it with the flute as well? Just that, the color.
Sure.
That
And while he's finding that, you know,
what do you want
to? Some of the cadenza sounds good.
Okay.
You know, I also just want to say, Marcus, that we haven't talked about this explicitly, but you write so beautifully for the flute. And
thank you.
You know,
I love writing for flute too. I don't mean to give the flute.
Right. And one of the things we talked about so much, many of the pieces that have been written for us are just fiendishly difficult. And, you know, we spend all this time kind of working things up. This, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's been such a joy to put together, and we can't wait.
Good.
Can't wait to show
Just
it.
different kind of challenge, right? So you can write on it.
Mm-hmm.
So you won't be able to see us too well. Hopefully this is. Okay.
Just a little excerpt.
Exactly. No, that's beautiful. And okay, so question for Marcus. I feel like the bachelor number one. Okay, now, what I want to know is, with that very delicate tonality, and I'm asking you to write a concerto, and you're picking the instruments and the timing and the subject. How do you not only choose instrumentation, but how do you make sure that comes through without having to do an electronic viola d'amore, right? I mean,
Sure.
No, let's not do that. So tell me what you think. What do you think about when you were composing this with instrumentation?
Yeah, and I think it's an issue with the flute too. If the flute's in the low register, a lot of flute concertos are just high and loud a lot of the time.
Right.
And so I definitely, again, because of the subject matter, didn't want this overly aggressive and loud piece. I wanted it to be delicate, and it does have some powerful moments in it, but a lot of those happen when the soloists aren't playing. And then the piece does rely a lot on sort of like what I like to think of as sound objects instead of actual melodies or harmonies in a traditional sense. So sort of like these gestures that are about the color of the orchestra. And you can make those as a composer anything you really want with the orchestra. You can make them very loud and aggressive and powerful and bombastic, or you can make them very ethereal and magical and soft and delicate. And so just for this piece in particular, I was really focusing on exploring kind of the range of these soft and ethereal and delicate sounds, while still being able, like the dramatic arc is still, there's a lot of drama in the piece, but the peaks and valleys are maybe a little bit more compressed. So like a crescendo means a little bit more. Like when things get a little louder, it's more of a moment than in Beethoven symphonies where things are suddenly loud, suddenly soft. There's a lot more delicacy moving through the piece between the ebbs and flows of the intensity of the piece. As far as kind of highlighting the instruments, there's a lot of kind of what we would call recitative style writing. So where the orchestra will play some kind of music and then holds while they're holding and being still and soft, they'll provide sort of the padding for the soloists to play their response to that music. So that's a good solution to kind of creating the possibility without amplification for a delicate instrument like viola d'amore to be heard over 30 odd players in an orchestra who very easily could overwhelm that instrument acoustically.
Well, and I think with the chamber orchestra too, a lot of us are so used to playing chamber music, and with Scott St. John leading that in Man, it's going to be really great to play this as a chamber piece, which is really exciting. And I've always loved your choice of percussion, but sizzle cymbals, Tibetan prayer stones, and log drums. I know Tibetan prayer stones. I have some from the Ancient Voices of Children that I've performed way too many times, but
Right.
but the idea that you have to go find sizzle cymbals and log drums, it's, at least you don't have branches that you have to shake that we've had, or really random
I've done
things.
it.
Or cigar boxes, and I have the one I found that I looked for 40 different boxes of what it sounds like when you scratch them. So thank you for keeping it a little bit normal but abnormal. It's really great.
Yeah.
We have a question from the audience for Matt. What key is the viola d'amore in?
Oh, great question. It can be in, there are lots of choices with all these strings. Right now I have it tuned to, it often is tuned to a single key. You're correct. So right now it's tuned to D minor. So everything, I have lots of A's and lots of D's plus one F natural. So just the one F. And so just by changing that one string, the next most common tuning would be a D major, where I just have to tune just that one string up a half step. That was one thing that was particularly interesting, I will say, with Marcus's previous piece. We did a really cool tuning that involved, since it sounds like this questioner knows something about tuning and intervals. This is a lot of perfect fourths and fifths I have. But with Marcus's other piece, we had two tritones, which was really, really super cool. But this is in a nice D minor, to answer the question. Yeah.
Like a lute. That's really beautiful. Well, and as far as, so the piece is about 17 minutes long. It's kind of the max that everyone wants. That I think is going to be perfect to reprogram, right? But what I do love about how things just work out, the fact that the only concert we had to cancel or postpone was the concert this was going to be on, and your piece is about climate change and all of that. And while I don't try to machinate everything in a season, it's more about an overarching theme. The fact that so many of the pieces that are commissioned this season are about climate change is just phenomenal. And so it actually worked better this season, much better. So you were alluding to this because you had it germinate more in your brain for another year. What did you do differently from where it was going to be originally performed in May of 2019, right? And then whenever. Life
2020. It was going to be May 2020.
Right. So what did you do differently?
May 2020, and then now September 2021. It's sort of the original. Nothing about the timing of the piece has really changed. I would just say the piece has been slightly enriched coloristically, and it allowed me to sort of sit with some of the sounds and some of the gestures I'd composed. So I actually the odd or somewhat odd percussion was actually something that I changed. It originally just had sort of plain percussion. Harp
is also a new addition.
Harp was a new addition because I knew that you were there was going to be harp on the new concert, and there wasn't going to be harp on the May 2020 concert. And flute, viola, harp is a storied combo in the repertoire. So I love writing for harp. It's a great instrument, especially in a chamber orchestra. It can really play off. And you wanted me to use the newly purchased celeste, which is another lovely, delicate instrument. So I was just like in heaven with all these amazing colors that I got to work with sonically. So there were a couple of things that used to be very spare and very severe in the original score that have sort of taken on a richer dimension, and not necessarily quote unquote prettier, but just a little bit more complex. And I think that's kind of a reaction to what I know I have gone through, and probably other people have gone through over the past year and a half, is like dealing with an epidemic and dealing with social justice movements and things like that. Things have become more nuanced in our everyday life, I think, hopefully. And we've really had to be thinking about things in a more dimensional manner and more about the intersection of our various interactions during the day and during the week and during our entire lives. And so I think that was sort of a layer, sort of like a patina that went over the music like during COVID and to the present day. So it just kind of grew, and I think to me, no one is going to ever hear the original version. I mean, it's out there somewhere, but this is
we burned it.
good. Shred it. No, I think it would have been still a beautiful piece, but it would have been much more severe is the only thing that I can think about it. And I think the reworking of it and the enrichment of it sort of made it, it just made it have a lot more facets, coloristically especially. But the actual structure of the piece hasn't changed. It's just maybe like it's gotten a year older, you know what I mean? And it's developed some bruises and it's ripened a little bit, sort of. So
aging wine, yes, like
yeah, exactly.
No, that's great. And also, you talk about connections and relationships. So we started with that, and that is a lot. That's the reason this whole season is called Musical Threads. I mean, our whole, there's our brochure just hot in the mail, and it's like the idea of the threads that go between us and among us and how we can weave music through what we do. And that's what's exciting to me about new music and new composers. And one of the other pieces on the program, Maxime Goulet, we have recommissioned him. I see he's on here too. Hi, Maxime. And we can't wait to premiere the first movement of his Ice Storm Symphony, and it's going to be brilliant. I love the fact that we can also be an orchestra that does that says, hey, you have another year. Would you like to rework this? It's not set in stone. And with Maxime, I mean, Maxime, you're great. I'd get an email from you every couple of days. Let's try this. Let's do this. And I mean, that's so exciting to kind of be in dialogue with really brilliant minds. And his piece that we did before was the Checkmate one that was the animated Checkmate chess match piece. And so that was, it's just great, again, to recommission people and stay in relationship with them. So that piece will be on there. And we have, what's great as well, co-commissioners. And I think that's important and vital to guarantee those multiple performances that we do. I mean, we've got with Orchestre Classique de Montréal, Laval Symphony, Sherbrooke, ROCOreveal. So that's what's going to be exciting for him, is he's going to have 4 performances as well. And I know that this particular piece, you guys, Christina and Matt, you guys need to go around the nation performing this piece. That's what we're hoping is and promoting as well. Now this will be, we've gotten 118 more premieres, so we've got 8 more this season. So we'll be up to, I can't add, so 126 by the end of this next season on that. Along with the Maxime's piece is also Michael Abel's piece that has a string quartet solo in front of it called Delights and Dances. And what we usually like to do, or I try to program, is an introduction of a composer, living composer, before we commission. We'll be doing a world premiere commission by him in September of 2022. So just that idea that there's a continuous stream of threads running through what's happening. And then we have a Cimarosa piece that is always going to be really fun. And then there'll be a surprise that sometimes there's a surprise, sometimes there's not. And that's usually a very recognizable piece. So you can come hear that. But let me see if we have any more questions. Do you guys have anything you want to talk about that is about this piece that you want to share and that you are excited about before everybody gets to hear it?
I would love to, because I want to just chime in just to add on to what Marcus was talking about in terms of the extra year. I feel like that I was excited to do it a year and a half ago. I am so much more excited about it. I just so appreciate this opportunity to do this particular piece at this particular time, and it's been so exciting to work on this. To be in going along with your thread idea, Alecia. Marcus is obviously someone we've known each other now for several years and have had a chance to go back and forth on lots of things. So it's just been such a pleasure to be able to continue this dialogue with Marcus in a way that I would be very unlikely to do this with someone that I had just met. So I can text Marcus, I don't know, just random afternoons, like,
Many
hey,
times.
what about this?
That's great.
Yeah. And also just to pick up on that, to say that as you said, Matt and I have been married for over 20 years, and we played a lot together when we were very young, but then for many years we didn't play together. We had other projects that we did. We had young kids. Playing music was very expensive, actually. And there's nothing like a pandemic to really, as I said, we really needed to keep our musical voices alive, and we did so much playing together on our porch. We did a series of porch concerts last summer, and we commissioned many pieces together. And I think, May of 2020, we were sounding very different than we are right now. And so I like that thread. I also just have to say it's a real honor for me to come back to ROCO, where I played for the first 10 years of the orchestra, and Alecia is, one of my oldest and dearest friends. I remember when she looked at me and said, I'm going to start an orchestra. And I said, of course you are. So to be able to come back with you and the orchestra and my friends, and it's just really a great honor.
I'm so excited. I know. And this year too, we're moving to a couple of things. And what I think is so exciting is last year we were able to do our entire season. We live streamed for free, all for free. And we were able to do 0% ticket sales and have our entire season and still come out ahead in revenue. And so this year we're doing what we've always wanted to do, which is a pay what you wish model for everyone out there to know. There are certain things that have prices that are set, but for our concerts at St. John's, it's pay what you wish. So you can pay $0 or $1,000, or $10,000. So just suggesting, it's a subliminal thing. So, but one of the really cool things that Marcus has kind of living in infamy with as well right now is our QR code project. So because for 16 years we've paid for all the rights, all these years, millions of dollars, to the musicians, the publishers, the composers, to leave up for free listening and streaming the music, we have this vast collection that you can go on our site, and there's hundreds of hours of listening of a lot of composers that are women composer collection, composers of color collection, commissions. All of the commissions are up there. And so what we did first is planted along the Buffalo Bayou individual pieces of music with QR codes that are selected for, like at the Bat Bridge, Herbert Gliaz's piece that's called Flying Cerdo. Well, Marcus is on there for his piece that is the Concerto for Chamber Orchestra, and it's across the bridge at the Hobby Center right there. And so that's really exciting because now we have moved into 20 other partners that are using our QR codes. We've broken our playlist into mood-based, soothing, bold, and joyful, so that you can choose your musical adventure. And they're now in all the parks in Precinct 2. And so the Texas Children's Hospital, Texas Southern University, and it's like we're a good virus. And I did just say that out loud. And so I think that what's so exciting, and if you guys have your phone out, and I know it's late, maybe you've had a glass of wine, if you want to scan this, I feel like I'm selling knives, but if you want to scan this goes straight to our listening room, and you can actually go listen. And that's what's exciting, is to have this all over Houston and sharing everything that you guys do all over the place. So I cannot wait. We have our gala on the 24th that we'll be doing a little snippets of. We have sold it out. There might be a few tickets left if people, they're not, can't be there. But the next night, the 25th at 5 o'clock Central, please join us, live streamed for free anywhere on our website, ROCO.org, and Facebook and YouTube. You can search for @ROCO Houston. And also just please come and see us and send emails to info@ROCO.org, and you can ask any questions you want. So is there any last words of advice or joy that you want to share, guys? Any last words of wisdom?
Oh, to us. I'm just really excited. I mean, we've as Alecia, as you said, we played concerts all last year, but they were to empty places. So it's the idea of being back at St. John's with an audience full of people is just such a thrill. So I look forward to being there with everyone who comes.
Absolutely.
Likewise, it's really exciting. So
great. Well, I can't wait to hug everybody, and we will see you there September 25th. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you. Have a good evening.